All right, welcome back to the Elias Macko Show. Now, there's a new report out from the Montreal Economic Institute, the MEI, that shows when it comes to helping people climb the socioeconomic ladder, no Canadian province makes the honor roll. Ladies and gentlemen, no Canadian province even passes. Let's say 60% is the passing grade, right? On a score of 100, let's say 60 is the passing grade. If you look at all of the Canadian provinces, according to the MEI, number one is Alberta, but they're only at 57.4%. And who's at the bottom, ranking last on 10 when it comes to socioeconomic mobility, social mobility? Quebec, last place, 39.7%. Let's find out why. Seems to be endemic across the country. Vincent Geloso joins us now. He's a senior economist at the MEI. Vincent, welcome back to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So let's talk about the grade first off. Let's talk to our listeners about what you mean when you say social mobility, and then tell me how you ended up with a grade on 100 for all the provinces.
Okay, so let's start by just defining for people what social mobility means, because I think it's the most important thing on the table. Is there's two types of mobility. The first one is you want to know just in absolute terms, like how much extra dollars do you make relative to your parents? That's absolute mobility. There's another measure of mobility, which is relative mobility, which says regardless of how much your parents made, are you on a different rung of the socioeconomic ladder than your parents? Have you been able to climb up? So is a person born in the bottom 10% of society income-wise, is he able to go to the top 10% or even the top 1%? Ideally, we want both absolute mobility, that means that everybody's getting better off, and we also want relative mobility so that people can climb up the ladder according to their skills, according to their efforts. And what we do in our study is we say, okay, we know from this big literature that exists out there what are the determinants of both absolute and relative mobility, and let's try and get an index number, or a number that says what's the score for different provinces, mixing all of these key components that lead to more relative and absolute mobility.
So what are those components? What's the special sauce that creates social mobility?
So you want to think that there's two sets of determinants. The first one would be natural barriers. So this is stuff you want to think you're born with, okay, by that you don't have much control over, or things that speak to the social capital of society. So how much connectedness is there across people? How much trust there is in society, in society between individuals? Social fabric, essentially. So these are things very much outside our control and very much outside the control of government, at least directly outside its control. And then you have artificial barriers, and artificial barriers are things that make it hard for people by legal means, by policy reasons, make it hard for people to seize opportunities that allow them to increase their living standards. So that would be things like taxation that discourages work and investment and business formation or acquiring new skills, regulations that prevent people from entering new occupations or new sectors or move to places where the opportunities are better. So this would be artificial barriers.
So as the MEE points out, there's no Canadian province that, gets above a passing grade, gets above 60%. But boy, is there a large gap between number 1 and number 10, okay?
Yep.
So maybe let's start off with Alberta. They got to 57.4, as I mentioned before. What explains how well they did compared to a province like Quebec?
So Alberta does really well in terms of taxation. So it's very, very low tax district. It doesn't regulate businesses a lot, so that means it's possible for people to try their hand at starting their own business, to climb up the ladder to entrepreneurship. It means that there's more business dynamism in the province, so that means greater labor demand for people. Alberta is particularly good relative to other Canadian provinces in terms of not regulating housing too much. That means that people can move around within the province very easily, from high opportunity areas to low opportunity areas. If there's better jobs in another place, they can move to the place where there's better jobs, because the housing supply can adjust to swings in population in different places. That's where Alberta does really well. But the reason it doesn't get what you call the passing grade is Alberta also does one really bad thing, is it regulates occupation. So you want to think that people who have occupations like HVAC contractors, construction workers, Alberta regulates a large number of these jobs where you have to go through a very, very costly, time-wise, income-wise process to just get the license to do work. You haven't done any work. You have to go through a lot of hoops. And Alberta is a very big regulator of occupations, more than Quebec, actually, in that dimension.
So, Vincent, one thing I want to get to while we still have time here is I know there are a lot of people that believe that, a province or a state or, a nation that goes a little bit beyond on taxation, like more taxation and redistributes wealth, well, that will lead to better outcomes on social mobility. Now, I don't know if this comes down to ideology here, and I know, every single institute leans in one direction or the other. But what would you say to that? Because it sort of seems here that you're suggesting it's getting out of the way, that actually higher taxes lead to less social mobility.
We actually account for this. We try and say, so on the one hand, government by taxing discourages income mobility because it reduces the fruits of effort, but by redistributing, it can help people climb up the ladder. So what we do in the study to account for these two countervailing forces is, yes, we include taxes, but we also account for things that would really push up income mobility that governments can do, and that's schooling. So we do have variables for the quality of schooling, not the amount of money governments spend on schooling, but the quality of the schools. So we take, for example, from the well-known PISA score, so the standardized grades from large international studies on math scores for teenagers, and we take that as an indicator of the quality of schooling in the province. And in that regard, Quebec does actually really well. In fact, of all provinces, Quebec does best. It has the highest math scores. So when we say Quebec is last, it accounts for all the good things that government do. And on the other hand, they do so many bad things that the good things are not offsetting all the counterproductive policies. So we do account for this point. And I want to point out something really important. Is the way we present this study is there's a list at the end of all the low-hanging fruit that provinces can deploy to improve social mobility. And it's meant to talk to everyone, left and right. We don't want people to have a particular prior to say, oh, I can ignore the study because it's the MEI, I don't like them for X or Y reason. No, we're actually giving you the largest number of options possible where people can pick, because we don't think anyone says, and I think you'd be hard-pressed to find that, someone who says social mobility is bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Vincent, listen, I'm going to have to leave it there. I'll direct everyone to go to the MEI's website where they can find this study and more details on just what you looked at. Thanks so much for coming on today.
It was a pleasure.
That's Vincent Geloso. He's a senior economist over at the Montreal Economic Institute.
I'm Dylan Playfair.
And I'm Tyler Smith.
We're putting loneliness in the penalty box by talking to some of our favorite athletes about the importance of friendship.
This is Bromance.
Bromance is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, proudly Canadian-owned and operated. Charm has been part of your love stories and bromances for over 50 years. And you can find Bromance on the iHeartRadio network or wherever you get your podcasts.